Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we discuss my thoughts on Season 2, Episode 6 of Star Trek Discovery, entitled The Sounds of Thunder. And I gotta be honest, from right out of the gate, I found this episode to be pleasantly, surprisingly compelling and captivating and engrossing, much more than I ever would have assumed going into it. I would say my expectations were low to moderate low, especially after coming off of the Short Treks episode that was Saru-centric, going back to his origins of how he left his homeworld, how he was inducted into Starfleet and the Federation by the then Lieutenant Georgiou, which they do call back upon in this episode. We actually see some flashback sequences from that Short Treks episode. And but that Short Treks episode was one that I didn't find particularly resounding, and I had a lot of issues with. And while it wasn't the worst of the bunch of Short Treks episodes by far, I think the first episode was probably the worst, or at least the one that I liked the least, the Tilly-centric one. It still didn't leave me with high expectations for a potential sequel episode story, as this was tentatively going to be. And so going into it, as I say, I had these low expectations, and I was just thoroughly resounded by so much of it. It was highly compelling in how it revolved around Saru and his evolutionary change, his physically changing, not only becoming physically stronger and you know, without the fear sort of mechanism that guided him and has been the principle of his entire species' way of living, but he was now stronger-willed because of its absence, and finding out that this is an intrinsic aspect to their evolution, all that kind of stuff that the Ba'ul were trying to, you know, prevent, for fear of them ever becoming the dominant species all over again. We go back through the course of their history, enlisting the bridge android Arium, which I thought was really cool, seeing a lot more of her. This was a character that was given her name by the Trek writer and novelist David Mack in his precursor novel to Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery, going back, you know, some time now. And so to see these bridge crew characters, that's something I've been touching upon in Season 2 as well, seeing them becoming more fleshed out and more active participants in the stories. I love that. Arium was integral into uncovering, you know, all that information from the big sphere for the purposes of figuring out what it is. What is the tie that binds between the Ba'ul and you know, the Kelpians? And just learning the fact that at one point it was the Kelpians who were the dominant species, and it was the Ba'ul who were the prey. And here now they've turned the tables on the Kelpians for fear that one day they may be in jeopardy again. Which is kind of anachronistic in a way. It's kind of twisted and doesn't almost align because of how technologically advanced they are. They have warp capability. Why the hell are they staying at home? You know, why do they have a big Legion of Doom-esque lair that they later house and confine Saru and his sister in toward the latter half of the episode? If they have warp capability, why aren't they going out and exploring? And it kind of gobsmacked me, the little nugget of information that we find out toward the early portion of the episode, that Starfleet actually got into contact with them sort of inadvertently because of, you know, responding to Saru's original message using their technology. And so Starfleet is aware of them, and they're keeping them at arm's length. They don't seem to want to play ball with Starfleet or the Federation or anything like that. And so I guess they just sort of let it be, let it go. You know, we won't start any problems for you, you won't start any problems for us, as long as you let everything go and just walk away, turn your back now and you know, go home. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense necessarily. But I forgave it because of how compelling the characterization was, and the aspect of Saru being reunited with his sister, which I have to admit, there were a few times they were getting a little seemingly physically close, and I'm like, is it his sister or is it his girlfriend? You know, are we sure it's a sister? But yeah, you know, siblings, whatever like that. She became the priestess of their village in the absence of their father, who died, you know, who submitted himself to the culling, I guess. You know, per her dialogue, soon after Saru had left and all that kind of stuff. So all of that was really utmost compelling to me, and I think probably one of the only mild aesthetic detractors for me was getting a look at the Ba'ul in the latter half of the episode, where it's like this black ink muck kind of stuff, calling back to the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation when Tasha Yar was killed. The creature that came out of the muck in that episode, crossed with like almost an aliens-esque interpretation of the girl from The Ring, or something. The big hunched body, big wiry body, but then the long hair flowing down over the front. Only seeing the red glowing eyes and kind of shades of Venom as well, the Venom symbiote. But it was kind of just weird and odd to me looking as a creature goes. It seemed like it came up out of the muck. Like is it made of that? All the founders in DS9. Is it a liquid species? Does it have form? Does it exist in the water and all that kind of stuff, or in the muck, whatever this is, slime, mud, whatever it happens to be? I don't know. I wasn't really thinking about it that much while watching the episode, because I was so enraptured by the story and again, the reunification of Saru and his sister, and seeing the evolutionary changes of his strong physicality now falling in line with his now being strong-willed and so dominant. I mean, that sort of butting heads with Captain Pike on the bridge sequence before he finally deigns to let Saru go down to the planet with Michael Burnham, it was just, he's getting up in the face of Pike. And I was like, wow, okay. One minor quibble about the episode, I guess I could say, is the fact that we do touch back upon Culber's being, brought back into existence in some way, shape, or form here. We learn that his physicality, much akin to Saru's, is that much stronger and that much, brand new. Like, he's missing a scar. He's probably, missing elements from diseases he suffered in the past, things that might have affected his physicality, affected his body. And it seems like Stamets he's just smitten, and he's not really observing or aware of how out of sorts Culber still feels. And the fact that they only touched upon that twice in the early going of the episode, and then it was all but forgotten for the sake of focusing back on Saru and what was going on with his Kelpian species versus the Baul and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't exactly expect how the Red Angels, the energy signature is what brought them to Saru's homeworld in the first place, which was rather unexpected. And I like that Pike actually voiced my own thought as I was having it. He's like, it's a bit convenient for the red signatures to show up here. Just happens to show up at the homeworld of my first officer and all that kind of stuff. And I like Burnham's interjection that, oh, well, maybe it's returning the favor for, following the previous signals and sorting things out for the benefactor, whatever these red angels are. As we see toward the end of the episode, it became that much more prominent an aspect of the plot of the episode itself, with Saru and his sister witnessing a Red Angel up close and personal. We actually got a nice look at it, and it actually kind of reminded me of toward the 4th season of Star Trek Enterprise, when we first got to see, it was the first time since the original series we got to see a CG personification of a Tholian. It kind of sort of reminded me of that, with the red glowing nature of it, and I didn't exactly perceive what Saru does, that it's a mechanized suit of some kind, and that it tentatively involves time travel, like a super advanced technological species, potentially from the future, is coming back and influencing for the better, a la Sam Beckett from Quantum Leap, species around Federation space and things like that. And it goes back to a lot of speculations I've seen in precursor to season 2, as we were getting word of the Red Angels and seeing the iconography and the designs of them and everything like that, of the fan speculation of, could this be the Iconians, which play a large role in the Star Trek video game, whatever it is, which I've never played. I've only seen scarce bits of and things like that, so I don't know what the story is in that game as far as it pertains surrounding the Iconians. But from what little research I've done looking at Memory Alpha and Memory Beta and things like that online, that it could very well be maybe even a last surviving member of the Iconian race, or something along those lines, a small band of them, potentially in the aftermath of their own species' destruction, as it is said to have been. Maybe they're going around and sort of trying to be humanitarian or benevolent and trying to save species that are on the verge of being wiped down in a similar fashion. And maybe it's a last-ditch effort from whatever this species is to just save people. And wherever they can't do it themselves, they leave their energy signatures. They're putting it out there and hoping that some localized system or localized people can answer to that call, can put the puzzle pieces together in a, roundabout fashion, figure out what the problem is that is impending, and write it. I would love it if it's, if it turns out to be a villain that isn't a villain, kind of a la Doctor Who. If you go back to the Swan Song episode of Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor, his final episode involved a species of these, like, it's a glass species of aliens. I don't remember what they were called. I think the Testimony or something like that. And he was operating under the assumption that they were, evil, and they were trying to, like, manipulate people using the memories of the dead and all this kind of stuff. And then eventually he hits a wall and he realizes, oh, wait a minute, they're actually doing something good. I kind of feel helpless and hapless that now I realize they're not evil. They're doing something benevolent, something helpful. And I would love it if that would turn out to be the case in the second season of Star Trek Discovery, that in fact these Red Angels are maybe the Iconians doing one last bit of good with their dying capabilities or something along those lines, from a distant future, from a time portal or something like that. Or maybe just their technological advancement is so advanced that it just can't be read and processed as anything, current timeline, that kind of thing. But one way or the other, again, going back to my overall thoughts of this episode, I really don't have a whole hell of a lot to say, because I just found it resounding and captivating to watch. There was like one, visual cue, the way they filmed toward the end of the episode when Saru's sister is aboard Discovery and they embrace and sort of put their heads together, and then they do a pass around from behind of his sister before she ends up on, the transporter pad in the transporter room. And I just thought that was a weird visual cue, the way that was filmed, the way that was edited together. It's like a minor complaint. Again, granted, now in talking about it and thinking about it a little bit more, it does seem a little bit odd that the Baul would be so, pointedly staying on their home planet when they have warp technology, and then keeping that, hide nor hair of that completely out of the awareness of the Kelpians, calling them the way in which they were doing, and the Red Angels getting involved, having to get involved to save their species because it was just an evolutionary thing, and how far back that went, as I say. It was just really enrapturing and captivating to me. I'd love to hear from you guys at this juncture, what you thought of it in the comments below. If you've seen it as well, love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below, as long as you are respectful to other people's opinions and you're respectable in sharing your own. And if you like this video and would like to consider supporting my channel, I would ask that you have a look at my PayPal contribution link posted both in the description as well as the comments below, which affords you opportunities very much akin to Patreon, where you can set up a monthly contribution, a one-time only kind of thing, send me a personal message alongside a contribution of any kind to request topics I may discuss in the future, ask for shout-outs, make recommendations of things I might check out, and potentially discuss down the line. And it would be a direct line of support to me that, anything you saw fit to send my way would be just 2 thumbs up and secure my longevity on YouTube. And so, yeah, otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Live long and prosper.